Hey guys, it's Ashley, and today I want to talk about fantasy books and series that have really great atmosphere. When I think of a fantasy with a really good atmosphere, it's something that when I read, I can just immediately picture what this world is like, you know, what it feels like, what kind of vibes am I getting from it. I can really see through the world building and through the way that the characters interact with the world, how harsh it is, how dark it is, things like that that really add that next level of conflict or tension to the story that really makes it go like above and beyond. So in this list today, I have 8 fantasy books that I personally think have a really great atmosphere. Something that when I first read it, I was immediately like, wow, this is such an interesting world that I just feel completely immersed in. So without further ado, let's get started. First up on this list is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This one is actually going to be a little bit different from the rest of the fantasies on this list because a lot of them are high fantasy and this one is more so like an urban, almost mystical, mysterious sort of thing. The Night Circus is essentially about these 2 magicians, Celia and Marco, who end up becoming sort of connected to one another in this competition of sorts, and the competition takes place in the Night Circus, which is a traveling circus created and, you know, run by magic, and basically they have to outdo one another and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. But what makes this novel so like moody and atmospheric, I'm gonna say that word a lot in this video, so I apologize ahead of time, is the like setting itself. Everything about this story is just magical. It's mysterious and moody and magical, and you don't know what is happening or how the Night Circus is running the way that it is. You don't know what is this tension between Celia and Marco. You don't know like all of the characters that you end up following and all of the things that are happening even outside of the Night Circus. It's just so mysterious in the way that it's written and the way that it all comes together that it really adds, again, that level of tension that you're looking for in like what the heck is going to happen. In addition, just like the setting of like a circus and like people who are doing secret magic and all of this stuff. It's hard to explain, and I feel like I'm not going to do a perfect job of explaining any of these stories and how they feel just super atmospheric to me, but that's the best way that I can describe this book. You dive into this book and you read this book and you're immediately immersed in this world of mystery, and it's so wonderful. Next book I want to talk about on this list is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This was a pretty recent read. If you've been watching my videos, then you'll know I've talked about this so much, so I'm going to keep my explanation pretty short for this one. This is a Middle Eastern inspired high fantasy, so everything about this story is enriched in culture and lore and all of these things that just really add to the story and make it what it is. It's so good. Again, there also comes that level of mysteriousness where the main character Nari doesn't know of her background, and so it's like she's being thrust into this new crazy world with all of these magical creatures and magic that she didn't know existed. You go into this story and the world itself, Daevabad, the craziness of all of the action and just the political intrigue, just it really adds to the atmosphere and it makes it, again, pretty mysterious because you don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know another way to put it. It's rich, it's diverse, it's like so good. It's got so much going for it when it comes to like fantasy itself, and I'm just very happy that I read this series because I really loved it. So there are a couple of books on this list that have pretty similar moods and vibes for me, and the first of which is Mistborn, or the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. For some reason, when I was reading this, I pictured every scene happening in the middle of the night in the very light drizzling rain with all of the like mists swirling around, and it just made it so much better. So the world itself is really dark. There's a lot of death. There's a ruler who is a like immortal dictator of sorts. There's all of these slaves that are oppressed and forced into labor and living in squalor. And then there's the contrast of the nobility living in their manors and throwing balls all the time. So there's already a major like conflict happening that just adds a lot of tension. But then you add in that element of these creepy mists that you don't know what they are, that are sort of swirling around and people are afraid of them. There's just a level of tension and fear running through this story throughout the entire thing, and you're just following along with Vin as she is, you know, learning about all of these new things, this magic, this just everything. It's everything that you want. And then as the series goes on and Vin becomes more confident in herself, trusts the people that she's around, she, grows more with her powers and her abilities, the world becomes a little bit less frightening and scary, but then, there are bigger and badder, more frightening and scary things that are introduced. It's never-ending fear as to what's gonna happen, and I just think that that really, drenches the story in this just tension that you cannot get rid of the entire time you're reading. I don't care that this book gave me such anxiety because I didn't know what was going to happen. I loved it. So another one of the dark stories that I want to talk about is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. So there's two different things for me going on when it comes to the atmosphere of this story and how it adds to the reading experience. The first of which is the historical fiction aspect of it. So this is a story that takes place partly in 1902 New York, and there's this heist happening, and there's a character who's trying to get on this team so that she can go and perform this heist with them and steal the thing from them before they get to it, and all of this stuff that has to do with the plot and stuff like that. So when it comes to the history, everything is new and everything is also not new, because you're in New York, you're in a place that is pretty recognizable from all of the movies and books that have been set there, but it's in a completely different time period. So it's very interesting the way that the differences between the two play out, especially because Esta, our main character, has actually time traveled back to that point. So she's used to the present day with all of the, tensions and conflicts that are existing then, but throw back all the way to 1902 with completely different tensions and conflicts and things that are happening, and she is just taken for a wild ride. So you're kind of going along that with her, and it's just a really it's really awesome to be doing that. And the other thing that adds to the atmosphere is the magical element of it, because a lot of the characters in this story have different sorts of powers and different abilities that they can do. And then of course with the whole heist happening, there's the whole will they, won't they, will they get this done without, getting caught or whatever, won't they, what'll happen? So there's just, again, so much tension, so much anxiety, and it's so good. Next up we have An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. It's been quite a while since I've read this story, and I do have a bit of a history with this series, just reading it, not finishing it, that sort of thing. So I'm gonna do my best to try to explain how I see the atmosphere of this story. An Ember in the Ashes is based off of the Roman Empire, I think it is. So it's very imperial almost. Half of the story you're following this girl who is part of the almost lower class of scholars who is constantly oppressed and beaten down and just, living in the not best conditions and always living in fear all the time. And then on the other half of the story, you follow a boy named Elias who is trained in this very prestigious, very harsh school. So you have, fear through half of it, and then very harsh violence in the other half. And it's a very different contrast between the two, especially when you put them together and their stories collide, and then all of a sudden all of these things are happening at once, and it's just absolutely crazy. Like I said, it's got violence, it's got, Laya, one of our main characters, posing as a spy in the Martial Empire, or whatever you want to call it. The intrigue and the secrets and the lies, the forbidden romance that happens, oh my god! There's just so much in this story that adds to the atmosphere. The world building is so, like I said, harsh and, again, violent, because that's literally what it is. It's horrible, but it adds so much tension, and it's incredible. I really, really want to reread the series and make it all the way through to the very end now that it's finished, because I just really not only want to know what's going to happen, but also want to get back into this world, get back into this scary environment. And I'm so scared, but I'm so ready and here for this. We're going to talk about my last dark and gritty story on this list, and that is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I feel like I don't talk about this series enough on my channel because some people are absolutely obsessed with the Six of Crows duology, and I really did like it. It's not my favorite ever that I've ever read, but I really did like it, and I should really talk about it more. Six of Crows, if you don't know, I feel like this has been a super popular series, but if you are unaware, it's like a heist book again, where there's a group of characters who come together and they have to steal something from this really scary place. The thing that really adds to the atmosphere of this story and the mood and all of that is not only the setting and not only the tension that comes with the plot. So you've got all of these characters who, butt heads with one another, who, some of them have ulterior motives, some of them, want other things or have other things that are going to get in the way of their jobs during this. You also have the like high stakes tension of the heist, you know, will they be able to get through this without getting caught? But in addition, the world itself is very dark and gritty. But the world building also adds to everything about this story. Where they start in Ketterdam, it's a very dark, like grimy almost place where, you know, you've got gambling dens and you've got all of these like, you know, criminals and things that are living here. Obviously, Kaz Brecker is, you know, one of the big bad guys, and then you've got Inej, who is like a like assassin almost of sorts, like a spy assassin. So they all have these very dark jobs in this very dark, grimy place, and it's so great. And then not only that, you go from Ketterdam to Fjerda in the ice court, which is where they have to take this, you know, do this heist and everything, and it's so scary because the ice court is very intimidating. Even the environment of it, it's snowy, it's cold, you know, they could very easily die here. And yeah, it's great. All of the characters could very easily die, but it's great. Oh my god, you just start reading this story and you're immediately just like, wow, this is a dark, shitty place, but I am here for this. Like, would I be able to survive maybe like 5 minutes in this world? Hell no, but I am here for this. So we're down to the last 2 books in this video, the first of which is one of my all-time new favorite series, and that is Scythe by Neal Shusterman. This is Thunderhead, this is the second book, but Scythe is the first one, and it's the series. When I was first creating this video, this series was not on this list, mostly because I don't know, I just didn't really think that it had like the sort of atmospheric vibe that I look for and get when it comes to fantasy books, but this one I realized it's because it's a different type of vibe. So whereas the Night Circus was very magical and mystical, and then like an Ember in the Ashes, City of Brass, Six of Crows, they're all very like high fantasy that are enriched in different things. It's hard to explain, but Scythe is completely different because this is technically like a futuristic version of our world. Our world still exists. We still have the places that we're all aware of and that exist today, right? But there's this different level added onto it that's very cold and calculating to me. When you first dive into this book, you realize that we've conquered death, you know? We don't really need doctors and all of that. You can be brought back to life if you're rendered deadish, which is what it's called, right? And not only that, you have this thing called the Thunderhead, which is this overarching AI that's basically taken over like everything. You know, it's in charge of the criminal system, it's in charge of how people get their jobs, how people go about their days, you know? It's a voice in the darkness for some people, and it's like this futuristic like world that's supposed to be perfect but is actually overwhelmed with corruption and greed when it comes to the Scythedom, who are the people who choose who dies and when. So it's like there's so much that we know, you know, from our real world, but there's so much more that's added onto it that again makes it very cold and calculating to me. I have to add it onto this list because you go into this world thinking that you're going to know, you know, at least some of what is happening, because it's just an urban fantasy, right? It's got fantasy elements set in what is technically the real world, but it's so much more than that. And so I had to add it onto this list because you read some of these scenes and you just get this feeling in your gut. You're like, you know, this cannot be happening, because some of the scenes and some of the characters and some of the things that they do just feel so realistic that it's scary. And so I had to add this onto this list because of all of that. If I didn't have that visceral like gut reaction reading some of these scenes, I would not have been able to put this on here. So because of that, it's a very scary book for me because of how real and also sometimes obviously fake, but like you can clearly see some of this in different ways, shapes, and forms existing in the real world. So that's why it's scary, that's why it's on this list. I'm gonna stop talking about it. So the last book that I have on this list is A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. This is a West African inspired high fantasy following 2 characters and a lot of stuff that happens. Again, just like with City of Brass, this book draws on influence and culture from a different place in the real world to create this fantasy world. So it's very enriching, it's steeped in culture, and it's just such a great book. This book actually takes place during a festival around this time, so it's a week-long festival with this competition, and these 2 characters have a lot of different things that are happening during this time. The competition itself, it adds a sense of like I don't know, there's so many people who are so like happy in the background of this book, and it's a stark contrast to the like deep tension and conflict that's happening in the forefront and as like the main characters in this book. So it's a very, like I said, stark contrast, and it kind of not really throws you for a loop, but you know, you have all of this conflict and plot set against this backdrop of something that's supposed to be a great time. So it's really, really interesting. The world is also very vivid. There's a lot of detail that went into the world building that really makes you feel like you are in this world, that you are experiencing it, and all of the horrible things that go along with the plot as well. And it's just so good. Of course, the backdrop of this world set against the like almost enemies to lovers like romance that happens is just so good. So good. Those were the 8 books that I chose for very atmospheric fantasy books. I wanted to start giving you guys some like actual recommendation videos rather than just, I don't know, other videos that I've been doing. I've been trying to come up with different things to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you got a book or 2 out of this that you might be interested in reading. If you have a fantasy book or just a book in general, it doesn't have to be fantasy, that you really just were immersed in. You felt like you were reading it and you could so clearly and vividly picture this world that you were in, let me know in the comments. I am a sucker for any sort of book like that, any atmospheric fantasy or just book in general, so I would definitely love to hear your recommendations. World building is obviously like a huge part of fantasy writing, so I'm very glad that I was able to shine a spotlight on some of these really unique, awesome stories that I absolutely loved and that really made an impact on me with the atmosphere of the world, the tension. I love them so much. So you guys, I think that's going to be it for this video. If you want to follow me on any of my socials, all my handles are in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye!